When I stood outside my parents' living room and heard my mother laughing about how easily they had manipulated me, my hands started shaking so hard I nearly dropped my keys. They had planned the entire holiday around using me as free labor, assuming I would gladly spend my Christmas Eve watching 9 chaotic children upstairs while the adults drank wine downstairs. For years, I had let them treat me like an unpaid servant out of a foolish sense of family loyalty, but in that quiet hallway, listening to my own mother boast about taking advantage of me, something inside my heart finally snapped. My name is Parker, and at 28 years old, most people who look at my life from the outside would think I have everything going for me. I work long hours as a financial manager at a growing tech firm, earning a solid living that allows me to afford a comfortable apartment near the downtown area. My colleagues see me as dependable, organized, and capable of handling intense pressure without breaking. Yet none of them know how completely exhausted I am by the relentless demands of my own family. Living just 20 minutes away from my parents made setting healthy boundaries practically impossible over the years. The heaviest burden usually came from my older sister, Rachel, who was married with 2 hyperactive young kids named Leo and Maya. Almost every Saturday morning like clockwork, Rachel would show up at my apartment without warning, flash a sweet manipulative smile, and abandon her children on my doorstep for 12 hours straight while she went out for spa days or fancy lunches with her husband. By the time she returned late at night to pick them up, my apartment was always a total disaster zone, and I was completely drained from chasing 2 energetic kids around all day instead of resting. After months of suffering in silence, I finally tried to stand up for myself during a Sunday dinner at my parents' house, hoping my family would understand how exhausted I was. Instead of receiving support, my father brushed my feelings aside, saying that family always supports one another, while my mother made me feel guilty by reminding me that I was single without any real domestic responsibilities. Rachel even had the nerve to smirk and suggest that taking care of her kids was good practice for my future, leaving me feeling completely isolated and deeply ashamed for simply wanting my own weekends back. That familiar toxic dynamic escalated to an outrageous level early in December when my mother called me at work and demanded that I pay over $2,000 to cater a lavish Christmas feast for 25 relatives. Because she sounded overwhelmed and stressed, I reluctantly agreed to cover the expensive catering bill, sacrificing the vacation savings I had built up over the past year. However, when the restaurant called me a week later to report a minor menu change, I drove over to my parents' house to discuss the food options, only to overhear the horrifying truth through their cracked living room door. My mother was on the phone boasting to my aunt about how clever she was for convincing me to cover the massive catering bill, while simultaneously volunteering me to babysit all 9 visiting children in a back bedroom for the entire night. Hearing her explain that I had no real life of my own, and was used to being exploited every Saturday caused a wave of intense anger to rush through my veins. I quietly walked out to my car, pulled out my phone, and immediately canceled the entire $2,000 catering order, securing a partial refund before deciding to take a major stand. Instead of staying in town to be humiliated, I immediately reached out to my college roommate, Chloe, who had previously invited me to spend the holidays at her family cabin in the snowy mountains. Within 24 hours I packed my bags, left the city behind, and drove through a heavy snowstorm to join Chloe and her warm, welcoming family. Stepping into their cozy, pine-scented cabin filled with genuine laughter, fresh-baked cookies, and crackling fireplaces made me realize just how toxic and transactional my own household had been for my entire adult life. On Christmas Eve afternoon, my phone started buzzing continuously on the coffee table, showing frantic incoming calls from my mother who was demanding to know where the catered food was and why I was not at the house yet. I calmly answered the call and informed her that I had overheard her cruel plan to lock me upstairs with 9 children, so I had canceled the catering order and left town for the holidays. She immediately flew into a rage, accusing me of being heartless and dramatically ruining the entire family celebration just as the rest of my relatives began arriving. Rachel grabbed the phone next and started screaming at me, claiming that I was being ridiculously selfish for refusing to watch her children, so that the rest of the adults could relax together. I pointed out that my time was just as valuable as hers, and before she could hurl any more insults, I hung up the phone and turned off my cellular service completely for the rest of the holiday, spending Christmas morning in absolute peace alongside people who truly valued my presence was the most liberating experience I had ever felt in my life. When I finally turned my phone back on the next day, the screen was flooded with dozens of furious text messages from my parents and sister blaming me for their embarrassing disaster of an evening. They described how the guests had to eat cheap takeout food, how the house was completely trashed by unsupervised children, and how several relatives left early due to the chaos. Reading those angry messages did not make me feel guilty at all, because for the very first time, I saw their rage for what it truly was, a total loss of control over their dedicated servant. 5 days after Christmas, my parents and Rachel showed up at my apartment door unannounced, pounding furiously on the wood until I finally opened it to face them. My mother immediately marched into my living room, weeping dramatically about how I had humiliated the family in front of all our extended relatives who now viewed them as terrible, disorganized hosts. My father demanded that I apologize for my childish behavior, while Rachel glared at me with absolute fury, insisting that I had ruined her only chance to relax during the stressful holiday season. I stood my ground with absolute confidence, looking them directly in the eyes and telling them that I was done being used as their unpaid babysitter and personal wallet. I explained that real families support each other with mutual respect, rather than manipulating one another for personal convenience and financial gain. When my mother threatened to cut me off from future family gatherings as a punishment, I simply smiled and told her that I accepted those terms, officially ending their long era of controlling my life before calmly showing them to the exit door. After they stormed out into the cold hallway, a profound sense of peace washed over my entire apartment, making the space feel brighter and lighter than ever before. I spent the following weeks establishing strong personal boundaries, blocking their phone numbers and focusing entirely on my own happiness, professional success, and new meaningful relationships. I learned that standing up for yourself might feel terrifying at first, but protecting your self-respect is always worth losing the people who only valued you for what you could provide for them. If this story reminded you of the importance of setting boundaries with toxic people, please make sure to click the subscribe button below for more powerful real-life dramas. If you want to watch another incredible story about standing up against family betrayal, click on the video appearing on your end screen right now.